Hello, my name's Jasper, you're watching Buckle Up, and this is the brand new 2024 Mini Cooper SE. And today I'm going to ask the question, have Mini done what they did at the turn of the century and brought us a hot hatch for the future era? Now I say for the future because in case you hadn't guessed it, the E in this car's name does indeed stand for electric. Let's start with the styling at the front of the Mini, which does in fact look quite familiar, but more modern. You've got some tidier elements around the headlamps, there's less fuss in general at the front of the car, and it's all quite a lot smoother in the name of aerodynamics. So your grilled section is now a single piece without any dividing sections in it. You've got a fantastically low splitter down at the front here, very sporty. These headlamps are just a simple oval, and we've lost the clamshell element to the bonnet, but you do still have this lovely rounded haunch over this front light cluster. There's a gorgeous line that runs down the bonnet. You've of course got your blacked out Mini badge, your sensor for your assisted driving systems, and this fantastic gloss black element to the grille. If we continue round the side, you'll see again familiarity but simplification, because we've lost the black plastic arch that used to run over the wheel. You do in fact just have a single crease line. There's a nice haunch that runs along the entire side of the car. There's a crease in the door line, and you've got on this sport trim a fantastic bit of styling at the base of the door card there. With this being the Sport, you also get these chili red mirror caps and your chili red roof. You'll also see that you've got your blacked in A and B pillars, so again, like with the previous Mini, you've got body, glass house, and then a floating roof at the top. These alloy wheels are an 18-inch design with a diamond cut front that really stands out against the dark paintwork on this particular car. At the back here we also have our charging port underneath the traditional fuel filler flap location. This has both a Type 2 and CCS fast charging connection.
The Cooper SE has a larger battery than the Cooper E at 54.2 versus 40.7 kilowatt hours and charges faster at up to 95 kilowatts, meaning 10 to 80% in less than 30 minutes.
With this car having the Sport styling pack applied to it, at the back you get this mahoosive John Cooper Works wing over your rear glass, and this is not the only John Cooper Works badge you get on this car. You've got them in the centre of each wheel cap, one on the front grille, and a couple in the interior as well. With this new generation, Mini have streamlined and lifted some of the lighting design, which starts with these rear tail light clusters, which are no longer just a union flag, but instead a triangular shape with a lot of pixel elements in them, and finishes with the headlights back up front, which have not only the fantastic LED ring around them, but also these two strikes here, which add a little bit of emotion as you approach and leave the car, and in here you've got a fully adaptive LED beam.
You can also customise how the tail lights and front lights look according to your tastes using the screen inside the car.
While we're down here, let's talk about a couple of the little sporty bits this car has. So you've obviously got your badging at the front, your blacked in flush grille, this front splitter and sporty vents down here. You've got some strikes around the side, and obviously this black plastic continues around the base of the car to a diffuser at the rear. Now the back end of this car looks incredibly squat, wide and sporty. Such a purposeful bit of design. You've got a really strong hip line round here, this excellent bit with some strikes in it, and this really aggressive looking diffuser. Across your boot lid you've got this blacked in bit of plastic that says Cooper S in it, and of course with this being the electric model, that S is in a green script. As previously mentioned, you've got this humongous wing which hangs over your rear tail glass, which is nice and blacked in. Third level brake light up high on the top of that spoiler, and this back end just looks so good. I think it's pretty safe to say that Mini have done an excellent job with updating this styling, refreshing it and making it incredibly sporty and purposeful, just like a hot hatch for the future needs to be. But does it stack up when it comes to the interior and practicality that you need for a hot hatch? Let's have a look in the boot to find out. Unfortunately, when it comes to space in the boot, the Mini really does take its name to heart, because this space back here amounts to a mere 200 litres of storage, which is, quite frankly, pretty poor. Now, if you fold down both of these rear seats, which is thankfully pretty easy to do, you do open up about 800 litres of space, which is actually pretty good for this kind of size of car. Save for a top tether for the ISOFIX points on both of the two rear seats, you don't actually have any features back here. There is a warning triangle on the boot lid and a comically small parcel shelf, and then you've got a false floor which can be lowered for a smidge more boot space. Then under here you've got room for your tyre repair kit and Type 2 charging cable on the right, and then a surprisingly large subwoofer for the brilliant Harman Kardon stereo system sits on the left. This false floor is pretty substantial and nice and adjustable, but the Mini has never really had a tremendous amount going for it in the boot department, but it does usually offer enough space in the rear seats for actual passengers, so let's go and check those out. Getting into the back seats of the Mini Cooper SE is actually relatively easy, and the space back here once you're in and the driver's seat or passenger seat has whirred its way forwards out of the way is actually surprisingly good. The car is obviously relatively small, and therefore this is a strict four-seater. You've only got a seat belt for these two outer seats. There is no middle seat. So that means that actually, despite it being quite a slim car, you've got plenty of shoulder room, and because the roof is pretty flat throughout its entire length, that means that headroom is reasonable. So I could be about 180 centimetres tall or 6 feet and still have sufficient headroom back here, and as long as the driver wasn't also 6 feet tall, I'd probably just about be able to squeeze my legs in. Now, sitting behind my own driver's seating position, I do actually have a really good amount of knee room back here, so yes, you can carry 4 adults in this car pretty easily. Material quality back here is excellent. The seats are a lovely faux leather with some gorgeous red contrast stitching. Headrests are really comfortable, and actually the seats themselves are brilliant. You've got an elbow rest here, which is kind of scratchy feeling plastic, but it's the back seats of this car. You can't really whinge too much about that. A nice speaker grille integrated into this black plastic here, and you've got somewhere nice to tuck your seat belt, so when you fold these seats down, the seatbelt doesn't get caught. Down here there's a little kind of cubby that you could put your phone in, and that's basically about it. And then there's a single cup holder accessible for those rear seats. Here you've got those aforementioned ISOFIX points, which are under flip-up plastic covers. But to be honest, the back seats of this, for this size and class of car, are surprisingly spacious. You've obviously compromised slightly on your boot space, but your passenger space is therefore pretty good. Let's see what it's like up front. The story up here in the front is very similar to the back in terms of material quality, except it's elevated. So I've got lovely leather adorning the steering wheel, and what I absolutely love about this interior is the fabric that's used on the dashboard. It's made from recycled material, and it's a lovely knitted element that really adds this brilliant bit of texture to this cabin. So I've got a fabric strap on this steering wheel, that's part of the Sport Pack, and I've got a leather strap on this dashboard. It doesn't do anything, but it just adds a bit of feature to this cabin. There's a nice pattern in this fabric. These seats as well are fantastic. They're part of the Sport Pack, they're bucket style seats, they are really nice and bolstered, incredibly comfortable, and they hold you so well. Practicality is pretty good, so my reusable bottle of water fits in both of these cup holders down here. There's a wireless Qi charger down here for mobile phones, and a pair of USB Type-C connectors for charging as well. The glove box is a pretty decent size. The other element of storage you have down here is, again, this kind of woven material, and that's just a small cubby with a lid on it. You can throw some bits and pieces that you want to keep out of sight into. I've got an armrest here, which is really nice for the driver. It's the perfect height for me, and this cabin is surprisingly adjustable. So the steering wheel has a good amount of adjust for both reach and rake, and this seat is electrically adjustable, including 4-way lumbar support, which is really good. As part of this being the equipment level 3 pack, I've got some excellent goodies. So this car is essentially fully loaded. I've got a lovely panoramic sunroof which doesn't open but it's got a roller top cover. I've got a heads-up display which rises out of the dashboard when you turn the car on, and then really the focal point of this interior, this gorgeous circular OLED display. Now take anything you know about in-car graphics and how good a screen is. This is better, I can promise you that, because it's using OLED technology, so the colours are incredible. They pop so well, and black is the deepest shade of black as well. The display technology is brilliant, and the graphics that it displays are also phenomenal. Mini have done a really good job here of modernising this system, making it so user intuitive and giving you so much option to control things and customise things through this screen. Below the screen, you've got a row of physical toggles. You've got a key to use to turn the car on and off. You've got your gear selector on this side here, which is a flick forwards and backwards for drive and reverse. And then over here, you've got a toggle dedicated to your experiences. So Mini have a lot of customizable elements for the screen and your driving experience, and those are all accessible through this up and down for various different modes. I've got a physical volume control and track skip ability over here on the left, and then below here there's some physical buttons. The screen is so fluid to swipe through. You can set shortcut buttons to your user profile, and then it integrates brilliantly with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You've also here got a really good voice assistant which is actually usable and works. Hey Mini, I'm cold.
Temperature increased.
My little friend Spike appears, adjusts my climate control and puts my heated steering wheel and heated seat on. I love the cabin layout. It's really refreshing, quite nice and funky, but it has everything you need in easy to reach and use places. You've got buttons for things that really matter apart from the climate control. It is always at the edge of the screen, and it's actually only a couple of taps, so it's pretty easy to use without taking your eyes off the road, because it grows when you actually tap on it, so it does make it pretty easy to adjust things. The cabin is therefore befitting of a modern era hot hatch in terms of interesting features, tech, and sensible layout that makes it easy to use. Does the car drive like a hot hatchback for the future? It goes without saying that it would be a crying shame if this all-new electric Mini Cooper did not feel like a Mini to drive, and I'm incredibly happy to tell you that it definitely does feel like one. The control inputs feel taut, they feel sharp, and you can definitely tell where the wheels of the car are pointing. So it's certainly retained some of that Mini DNA in terms of the darty handling and the engaging but fun element to the steering. What is new though is the electric powertrain, and with this being the sportier Cupra SE, what you get here is a single motor front wheel drive powertrain, and that produces at its peak 218 PS and 330 Newton meters of torque. But with this being electric, obviously both of those are delivered instantaneously. And what instantaneous power means is that it's pretty sprightly. So this will do 0 to 62 miles an hour in 6.7 seconds, which is not outright fast, but it's certainly what I deem in the right region for this to be called a hot hatchback. Because a hot hatchback is not about outright performance, it's about having enough speed and enough power to be fun, but retaining the critical element, which is interesting or exciting handling. And the Mini has that in spades. What I've done is I've taken the liberty of putting this into go-kart experience, which means that everything is pumped up to the maximum, your steering is sharper, your throttle is sharper, your brakes are more aggressive. And that is really what driving a Mini is all about. You've got that fun, engaging experience, which means you can hoik it into a corner, put your foot down, and just come out the other side absolutely loving life. In go-kart mode, you also get a lot more of a soundtrack, which is really quite enjoyable to listen to. It's a kind of futuristic revving sound that you get to enjoy as you put your foot down, and it almost pops on the overrun as well. If I put this back into core mode, which is essentially just your everyday driving mode for a Mini, which leaves you some of that DNA, but in a slightly less aggressive sense, it settles down, it's playful still, it's engaging, but it's not outright, ooh, power. You'll notice as well from this camera that the screen changes with each mode, so depending on what experience mode I've got it in, I've got different graphics, I've got a different setup to the screen, I've got a vaguely different soundtrack as well. This efficiency mode tells me if I'm using power or if I'm being very efficient and economical in the way that I'm driving. Flapping hummingbird if I'm being gentle, running cat if I'm being a little bit more aggressive. The screen, the graphics, the experience, it all ties together beautifully with this car. As you engage each different experience, you get a little sound effect, and this timeless one takes you kind of back to the original 1950s, 1960s Mini, where you had your single large analog speedometer in the center. But to be honest, the one that obviously gives you the most fun is go-kart mode, which when you engage, you get a little woohoo! Quite reminiscent of Song 2 by Blur. They have entered the chat, I've kind of determined. But this mode is definitely the one to engage if you really want that fun. With this car being basically fully loaded when it comes to tech, it is quite expensive at £42,050. But what you get with that is you get a whole host of automatic functions, driver assist systems, and some really nice bits of tech to keep you comfortable. In terms of actual drive, the car is remarkably composed at kind of pootling around town speeds. The suspension is firm and the car therefore handles ridiculously well, but over kind of repeated undulating surfaces it does feel a smidge choppy, but not necessarily in a negative way. It's just a kind of characteristic of the way it handles. The steering wheel is actually fantastically chunky. It's got some really good thumb rests and grips in it, and that means that it feels quite nice when you're driving. The little toggle you get in the center is also really easy to use to change direction, and this toggle you get for your experiences is brilliant. All of the switchgear in here is designed really well and super easy to use. Because of the power, it does, however, get a little bit leery if you absolutely plant your foot. You do get an element of torque steer coming through, which does, I guess, add to the hot hatchback element. You've also got a braking mode, which if you engage by flicking the drive toggle down again, you get surprisingly aggressive regen and, crucially, one pedal driving. So in braking mode, you can let off the throttle and come to a complete stop, and the car will just hold you there. So what that means is that for city driving, this car is actually brilliant. Another thing that has improved over the previous generation of Mini Cooper Electric is the battery capacity and therefore range. So this sportier one comes with a larger battery, which is 54.2 kilowatt hours, and with an efficiency in the real world of somewhere in the region of, say, 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. What you'll actually get is a real-world range of somewhere in the region of 200 miles, which in comparison with the old model is brilliant. WLTP claimed range of this car is in fact 240 something miles, and to be honest, you're probably going to struggle to see that, but in urban driving you'd see somewhere closer to that. In mixed driving, say 200, and on a motorway maybe somewhere in the region of 170 miles. So the range in this is far more usable than the previous generation of electric Mini was. And that really is a benefit of this sitting on a completely new bespoke platform. And you can tell that. You do sit a little bit higher up than you do in a traditional Mini because the battery is under the floor instead of in the transmission tunnel like it was on the previous generation. But the car is so much better for the fact that it's on a bespoke platform. They've improved the range, the technology and interior in here is fantastic. And what you actually get is such a good complete package that is a hot hatchback, but for the future. Turns out Mini have absolutely knocked it out of the park with a hot hatchback that really suits today, but also the future. You've got the space required, you've got the performance required, you've got the fun and engagement that's required to make this really one of the best cars in its segment. If you are actually looking for a new Mini Cooper SE, or in fact any Mini, this car has very kindly been lent to us by Stratstone Mini Chesterfield, so if you're in the market for something, it may be worth you giving them a shout. If you've enjoyed today's video, please do let me know by liking, commenting and subscribing to the Buckle Up YouTube channel. You can find all of our social medias and a way to support us in terms of merchandise linked down in the description below, or if you'd like to, you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. I will see you in the next video. Bye.